Okay, this is Stella teacher. Let's talk about page 30 through 60 of the book Man's Search for Meaning. So the author, Viktor Frankl, he was dragged to a concentration camp because he was Jewish, and then he's suffering greatly at the moment. And then there's an interesting phenomenon. A lot of the inmates, a lot of the prisoners, they start turning to religion. And then it's easy for us to assume that in those extreme situations where they cannot even properly feed themselves, clothe themselves, it would be very easy for them to have only primitive needs, need for food, and then they wouldn't even think about their spiritual growth. But then, very interestingly and surprisingly, many inmates turn to religion and then deepen their faith. So, there is no minister, and then there are no places to worship, but the prisoners improvised prayers and services, and then they became very genuine and pure in their faith. I thought it was very interesting. And then I started thinking about the reasons and motivations behind this phenomenon. It was probably because all the sources of validation and respect that they enjoyed in society were all gone. Those people could have been respectable doctors or professors or rich businessmen back in society, but they were now stripped of all of these external sources of validation, comfort, and control. All they were left with were their emaciated, extremely weak and thin bodies, and that the only place where they could find meaning was within themselves. And then the only place that they could explore was their inner selves. So the spiritual survival became a crucial focus because they could not really control over physical survival. So by turning to religion, the prisoners, I think, were able to transcend their immediate suffering, and then they could still maintain their sense of identity, sense of worth, and humanity among these extremely dehumanizing conditions. And then religion usually gives you a narrative that incorporates suffering as part of a natural cycle of life. Buddha, according to Buddhism, he experienced great suffering before he reached the state nirvana. And then also Jesus Christ, he suffered a lot on the cross before he finally became God. So I think having a religious perspective helped them go through suffering, thinking that suffering would have a meaning in their lives and it's going to make them grow and become more mature. Yeah, so I think having faith gave these people greater capacity to survive and maintain their mental health. Also, broadly, there were two groups of people. The first group was physically weak, but then they had mental fortitude. The other group was physically robust but mentally fragile. So this situation is not only physically challenging, but more spiritually and then mentally challenging, I think. And then the first group who has strong mentality had a tendency to survive longer, survive to the end until their liberation. I think the first group had the ability to sort of detach themselves and have an objective view about the realities because they were able to block the external influences, the harming influences on their soul and on their sense of worth, but they were able to retreat into their rich inner life and maintain the sense of worth and self-esteem, and they were able to maintain their dignity as a human being. So I think the mental capacity was sort of a buffer against the dehumanizing treatment that they received from the guards and all the environment that surrounded him. So I think this part gives us a lesson, the importance of learning and importance of intellectual life and importance of getting knowledge, because if you have the ability to learn and if you have the ability to reflect upon yourself, no matter what kind of situation you're in, you would have the ability to have uh, explore into your rich inner self and maintain the self-worth. But if you lack this kind of ability, if your external surroundings environment suddenly changes, for example, you're stranded in an island while traveling, or for example, you went to the military and then you have to go through extreme situations. You don't really know what's going to happen, or an accident might happen sometime along the way of anybody. So in these unexpected situations, it's very important to have the ability to reflect and then think and then have the rich intellectual self, because that can give you a great immense pride. And then I thought about this problem a lot, about this question a lot. What is the ultimate meaning of life? And that is one of the reasons why I chose this book. That is one of the reasons why I wanted to read this book together with you guys, because like knowing what the meaning of this life is and knowing the purpose of this life can be a great light up torch throughout the rest of your life. And then I have lived longer than you guys did, but then I still have many years to live, believe it or not, and then you guys as well. So for the rest of our lives, if we can clearly see what we are living for, the purpose of our life, then it's going to give us more clear focus. So and then I think I got a hint, I got a sense of purpose while reading this part. So while doing the extreme labor, while walking on the icy ground with bare feet, these men, what did they think of the most? Did they think of food? Yes, they did a lot, but the thoughts that sustained them throughout these harsh everyday daily life was the thought of their wife, the thought of their family. So I think the literature, many literatures, many writers, and many philosophers and religious thinkers, they have tried over many centuries to come up with the essence of life, the meaning of life. But then I think the ultimate meaning eventually narrows down to love, the true love. I'm not necessarily talking about romantic love, but then the strong bond and loyalty that you share with someone that you cherish. You don't really have to be related, blood related to that person. You don't have to bond yourself with that person through marriage or anything. But then if you have pure love for somebody, if you think that if you can sacrifice everything that you have for that person, I would say that is true love. And then if you have at least one person in your life that you regard so, then I think your life is already a success. So I think I agree with the author when he said that love is the ultimate and then the highest goal to which man can aspire. Because if you have at least one person like that in your life, then you can derive all the motivation and all the momentum that keeps you going on and that gives you purpose. So I think life is a process of cultivating that kind of love for somebody. It could be your parents, it could be your sibling, or it could be your romantic partner. But then if you feel like you can do anything, you can sacrifice everything for that person, I think that person is a truly successful person. I don't think it. I don't think it takes. I don't think it takes a pretty long time and dedication and continuous and steady effort. And I'm sure Viktor Frankl had that kind of relationship with his wife, and that's why he was able to drive that kind of power and motivation from his relationship with his wife. Yeah. So man's salvation is through love and in love. So man can be saved only by love, I think. So I don't think man can be saved by religion only. I think any religion which teaches us to truly love people around us, I think that is true religion. Or even if one is an atheist and doesn't have a religion, if the person um, can feel dedicated and committed and devoted to somebody and truly love somebody, I think that's a true course of, true way of life. Yes. Okay. And then there was this part that the author and other inmates in the concentration camp saw other regular prisoners. I guess they were German people, not Jewish, but then they just committed some crime and they became prisoners. They were walking by from distance, and then these Jewish inmates, they started feeling very jealous towards these ordinary prisoners because they had the basic necessities such as bath, toothbrushes, clothes, brushes, mattresses, and they were able to exchange mail with their friends and family. And then that appeared like lives of luxury to these people. So I guess happiness is not absolute, but that it's a very relative one. And then it can be very heavily influenced by one's perception. And then I recently read that there is this country, I don't remember the name. It could be Bangladesh or Bhutan. Uh, and then the rate of happiness that they felt, the average rate of happiness that they felt was always ranked number one. And then they were able to smile in any kind of situation. The country is not definitely a developed country, but then since the introduction of social networks such as Instagram and whatever, the rate just went down, which means that after they had this medium through which they could compare their lives with other people, they started all of a sudden feeling unhappy. So I think happiness is not absolute. Uh, Happiness can be very comparative. So I think if you if you can cultivate the ability to derive happiness from your own inner satisfaction and then your inner peace, then you can lead a very happy life for the rest of your life. But then if you constantly look to other people and compare yourself with other people, I think no matter how much money you had, no matter how high status you're gonna achieve, you're gonna feel relatively unhappy. So I hope you can remember that. Okay. And then there is this part about fate and destiny. So the chief doctor offered Frankel to be moved to another, transferred to another camp. And then these people thought that they are heading for liberation, freedom. But then nobody could really predict what's going to happen. It's wartime. There are many contingencies and unexpectedness. So rather than going on the truck with strangers, Franco decided that he would just stay in the camp with his friends. And then he told the chief doctor, I am not going to struggle against faith. I'm not going to struggle against fate. And then he learned to let fate take its course. And then later, the people who were transferred to another camp, they were all killed. So it turned out to be a right decision. So at each course of our life, um, we don't really know whether our choice is going to lead to success or failure. But then we still have to make a choice, make a decision, not really knowing, not really having the ability to predict the result of it. I think, but then Franco followed the principle of maintaining his loyalty and trust and support for his friends. I think that decision turned to be a right one. So I think following your fate does not necessarily mean a passive attitude, but I think this attitude is a very admirable and noble one because it does not boast your own ability. Because, like, no matter how smart you are, how strong you are, let's say you are Elon Musk, or let's say you're who's the strongest man on earth, I don't know, some kind of athlete, there is always limit to that. And there are so many external circumstances that one human being cannot control. So I think this attitude is the attitude of recognizing that there are so many things that you cannot control. And then if you accept the fact, and that if you make a decision at every moment of your life following your own moral principles, then it will eventually lead to a good results and peaceful results in your life. Yeah. So this is well summarized by the fable Death in Tehran. So this guy, he wanted to avoid death. So he took a horse and he ran to Tehran to avoid death. He did his best to do that, but then actually death was awaiting for him in Tehran. So sometimes in life, we compromise our moral standards, and then we betray other people, and then we harm other people because that's the way for survival. But then that ends up harming ourselves in the end. So I think following your fate and following your destiny doesn't necessarily mean that not making any effort, oh, whatever, the fate is already determined, the destiny is already determined, no matter how much effort I'm going to make, doesn't really change. It's not that kind of passivity that I'm talking about. It's about like recognizing that you're such a tiny human being, and then if you have no control over the external circumstances. But then there are certainly things that you can control, such as your attitude, such as the efforts that you make, and then your moral values, and then how you respond to this uncertainty, and how you respond to unexpected uh, incidents. Uh, so focus on the things that you can control, then you're going to have happiness and peace of mind, and also prosperity in your life eventually. Okay, so this is the fable called Death of Tehran. Okay, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you.